Hi, guys. Thanks for letting me talk to the co op tonight. I was following a truck down the road the other morning, and, it looked like the Marshmallow Man from Ghostbusters heading down the road. And, of course, the truck pulls off at the coffee shop. And so I go in, and there's Dick Horlick. And I said, Dick, those are bales of hay? And he said, yeah. I said, those are the largest bales I've ever seen. And he started laughing and he said, yeah, they're specially packed alfalfa going to Japan. And I said, I didn't know you exported. And he said, yeah, just about everybody in the co op exports. I said, have you ever heard of a company format called an IC disc? He said, no idea what you're talking about. And we left it at that. And he called his accountant and he called me and said, you know what? I need you to talk to the co op about this. So here I am, and I promise you, if you export product, I can save you money using the last incentive that our wonderful government has given taxpayers for exporting and incentivizing exporters. It's called an IC disc, and that stands for Interest Charge Domestic International Sales Corporation. There's two different types of IC disc companies that you can have. One, if your sales are 95% or more export, or a commission only. So for practical purpose, I'm going to talk about commission only because there's not a lot of people that can use a buy-sell disc. So this is called a commission only disc. And what you can do is you can take 50% of your profits on those export sales or 4% of the gross sales number, whichever is higher. And you pay that to yourself in a separate corporation as a commission. That commission is not taxed as it's an expense to your operating company, but it comes back to you in the form of a dividend. So rather than paying ordinary income tax rates, you pay dividend tax rates on the amount that you've paid into this commission. The best part about it, though, is you can defer that income in that IC disc for as long as you want, and you can compound it year after year. So every 4 years, every 5 years, you're going to have a loss year in farming. When you have that loss year is when you distribute those dividends, and when you do the distribution is when you pay the tax rate. So if you've got a loss operating in your operating company and you bring those dividends back, you pay zero tax at that point, not the 20% gross off of dividends. Let me show you an example. Let me give you the numbers and show you how this works. So as you can see, I used an example of $1 million of sales and $300,000 of gross profit. It's the same across the top lines. But on the left-hand side is your ordinary operating company. And you see you pay 37% ordinary tax, 9.9% Oregon tax. So you got an effective tax rate of about 46.9 or 47%. Now let's look at what happens with an IC disc. On that $300,000 of profit, you pay yourself a commission or an expense to the company of $150,000. That reduces your taxable income in your operating company. So your tax then goes down on the 150. You pay your Oregon 9.9, and you end up with an effective tax rate. Oh, wait, what about the dividend? So you bring the dividend back in. Let's just roll it in for now so we can see how it looks. We bring the dividend back. You pay the 20% dividend. You pay the 2.5% Oregon tax. And you end up with a net taxable income amount that saves you about 12%. And that's a worst case scenario because if you leave that dividend in there, the only thing you have to do is pay interest every year on the amount that's in that IC disc. Now, I know this is complicated. I know you don't want to talk to me about your personal taxes, but here's what I've done for you. I've given each of you a folder. In this folder, it gives the regulation for an IC disc. I've also put the Oregon tax code showing that it's only 2.5% on dividends. And I've included in there 5 very reputable companies that your tax accountants can talk to about setting up this disc. And of course, I will help any one of you. You all know where I live, so just give me a call or stop by, and I'll spend as much time as I can. And I promise you, I can save you money.